You know, nobody lives a life unscathed, and I didn't either. And there was a period of my life, and I was actually 38 when this happened. And without going into too many details, I was in really a depression for about 3 years. The only time in my life I've ever been depressed. And so I knew I either needed to finish the job and leave the planet, or I needed to get healthy. So I didn't really know at that point why I was even here, but what held me was my children, because I wouldn't do that to them. I went to France. I put them on a plane the day after they got out of school, and I got on a plane to France the next day. I had to go someplace where I didn't know anybody and I couldn't speak the language because I needed to see things that I was unable to look at when I was home and around people that I knew, which I avoided like the plague during that period of time. So I went to France and I brought a backpack and I bought a bicycle after I got there. And off I went. And every night when I was camping, I brought a tent and sleeping bag. And every night when I would get into my sleeping bag, I would ask God to show me what I needed to see. And and I promised, and this was really a key, I promised that I would not turn away. And every morning when I woke up, I would write whatever it was that came into my head, and I would thank God for keeping me safe overnight, and off I would go on my bicycle. And there were a lot of things that happened during that period of time to help me get back, but I really was wondering why I was here, because I had always felt really guided in my lifetime and had always done what I was, told to do. And when things didn't work the way I thought they were supposed to work, well, I didn't understand that. And this was also the only time in my life where I lost my faith. Now, I'm not going to tell you that I'm very religious, because I'm not, but I am very, very spiritual. And I do have a very strong connection with God, the universe, or however you connect with it. So after about 6 weeks, and when I was finally feeling good, like the first time in 3 years that I had actually felt good, well, then the images of what I had to see started hitting me. And we'll go into those in other videos if you want me to. I'm happy to visit those and tell you my experience. But it was toward the end of the trip, and this is really, this was life-changing. And this is really why I had to experience everything. Because it was toward the end of the trip, and being a woman, okay, well, there are certain things that women need. And I was in a little village. I went into a little village, and there was a little tobacco, a little shop, and I walk in, and it was a female proprietress. And I thought, oh, good, she's going to understand what I need and how important this is. All I had left at that point was about 3 francs, which is not very much money. And what I thought I needed was just like maybe 5 francs, just a little bit more than what I had. But by that point, I could make myself understandable. I mean, my grammar probably was awful, but I could make myself understood. So I brought everything up to the counter, and I showed her what I had, and I showed her what I needed, and she wouldn't sell it to me. And I had this headlamp that was certainly worth a whole lot more than 5 francs, and I tried to barter with her, and she wouldn't barter with me. And so I left the store without what I thought I needed, and I was out. When I left the store, I was just passing judgment. I would never do that, blah, blah, blah. And then I said, wait a minute. You have plastic, you have toilet paper. This is not a tragedy. But more importantly, I said to myself, and it's not my job to judge her anyway. I'll just let that go. The only thing that I can do is be true to who I am. So off I go with my bike and my, bungee cords and changes of clothing. And a couple of hours later, I go over this rise. Now, as I just said, I didn't really have very much money. So at that point too, I was just eating what I would find along the side of the road. So, raspberries, an occasional apple, and some wild strawberries, which were my favorite. And when I went over that rise, here was this massive field of wild strawberries. So for me, that was a score. So I park my bike and I go up on this little rise and I eat my fill of wild strawberries. And then I packed a bunch in plastic to save for dinner, because that was typically what I would then have for dinner. And when I looked down, I saw this white car there. And there was a man and a woman in there. I was in my 30s. I would say that they were probably in their 60s. And I thought to myself, well, gosh, how come they're not in here participating with all these wild strawberries? I mean, if you've ever eaten them, the flavor is beyond belief. It explodes in your mouth and it's wonderful. So I did what was in my normal nature to do. And I had eaten my fill. I had my dinner set back, and I just picked a couple handfuls of wild strawberries. Well, I got to tell you that I have been camping for, almost, about 2.5 months at that point. And so I was bathing in the stream, and I only had 2 changes of clothing. So to be perfectly honest with you, I probably didn't look real great, and I probably didn't even smell real great. But I go down to the car, and the woman was on the passenger side. She opened the window, and in my broken French, I said, "Would you like some wild strawberries?" And she said, "No, thank you, but would you like a cheese sandwich?" Well, I can guarantee you I never saw a cheese sandwich on the side of the road, and I thought to myself, cha-ching, protein, yes. And I said, well, yes, I would love a cheese sandwich, thank you very much. And they had this picnic basket in the trunk of their car. And so they gave me the cheese sandwich and I ate it and it was delicious. And then she said to me, "Would you like a cool drink of water?" And, I'd been filling my water bottles up in the artesian wells when I would go from village to village. And so, and this was in June, July. So yeah, it would get warm. And I said, well, yeah, I would love a cool drink of water. Thank you. And then she said to me, "Would you like an apricot?" Well, let me tell you, I'd seen lots of apricots when I would pass roadside stands, but I sure couldn't afford an apricot, and I love apricots. So I said, well, I would love an apricot, but why are you doing this? It's not necessary. And the woman looked at me like she was looking into my soul. And she said to me, "You wanted to share what you have with us. We want to share what we have with you." And in that moment, I absolutely 100% knew that that's all of our job, is to share the gifts that we have been given. I've been given a lot of gifts in this lifetime. I mean, I've been a banker, I've been a stockbroker, I understand that language, and I knew that most people did not. So when you ask me why I do what I do, it's because that's my job. That's all of our jobs. In my opinion, that is all of our jobs on this planet, is to share the gifts that we have been given. That's it.